Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 336 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by a very special guest on this day of recording. Please welcome from the NintenDormant podcast, we have George Banks. How's it going, George?
Hello. I'm going to fight you already about your assertion on your podcast. We've had this debate on our show, and I have a clip of you saying that we are the premier Nintendo podcast. So
yeah, well, you say anything when you're under the muzzle of a gun. Okay?
To be honest, fair enough.
No, it's great to have you on, George. Another great Nintendo podcast to check out if you guys haven't yet. I had the pleasure of being on your show a couple months back, and that was such a good time, and I'm so glad we get to collaborate again. Thank you so much for joining. And this week, listener, we're doing an Oops All News episode. That's right. We have been off the air for the last couple weeks. Obviously, we had our specials go up, the Golden Heads Award episode and our predictions episode. But it's been a couple weeks since we've actually recorded here at Super Switch Headz. So we thought we'd go through and pick up all the dregs of the news pieces that we missed while we were off. So we're going to be going through that. Awesome Games Done Quick is live right now. Pokemon has revealed its 30th anniversary logo. Circana posted some rather dismal sales numbers over the holiday season. So we're going to be breaking down all that and much, much more on this episode. But before we get into it, George, how are you doing? How was your holiday season? You having a good time?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. It was very busy. I have two small children, so it was sort of not relaxing in any way, shape or form, but it was very lovely. And, you know, the sort of classic parents trying to get to midnight on New Year's Eve. I think technically we got to midnight, but we were in our jammies tucked up in bed. So it's the first time that's happened for a few years. I've just spotted as well that you have Pilot Wings on in the background.
That's right. Yeah. That's a reference.
I'm very pleased about that.
That is a NintenDormant reference. Absolutely. That was the episode of the y'all's podcast that I was on, was talking about Pilot Wings.
Yeah, so I mean, if anybody hasn't listened to it, it's you know, what we do is every time we have a guest on, they pitch a version of the game, and I liked your pitch for Pilot Wings. It was, I mean, do you remember your pitch?
Yeah, it was like an open world. I went way too big with it. It was basically like an open world using Google Map data of the entire world, massively multiplayer. VR also, I think I put in there.
Do you remember your final boss? Because that stuck with me.
Oh, no. What did I say? What was my final
You went really big. I think, I'm pretty sure you said that aliens come from the moon.
That's right.
And you have to take them down. Yeah.
Well, that's how Pilot Wings ends, right? It's like, it's always like you get your license, then all of a sudden you're recruited into the military to take on some evil organization.
We mentioned it, didn't we? It's one of the best tonal shifts in gaming of all time. You just got this beautiful little like floaty game where you're just having a great time floating around, trying to hit targets. Like, oh, it's okay if you don't. Yeah. And then all of a sudden the screen goes blood red and it's, you've got to rescue these people and you've only flown 3 times. And it's just it's just weird. It's weird. And you're piloting an attack helicopter. It's brilliant. If you've never played it, go and play it.
It's very, are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president coded? You know,
yes. Yeah. And the guy who's there as well is like, well, I can't do it. Why can't you do it? You're a flight school trainer.
Yeah, exactly.
Surely you're more experienced.
Exactly. He just didn't want to get his hands dirty. But anyway, we could do a whole other episode on Pilot Wings lore in the future, George. Absolutely. Right. But I'm glad to hear that you had a pretty good time. I also had a pretty good holiday as well. It was, you know, it had its ups and downs. It's always stressful, as you said, corralling everyone in your family and whatever. But people did come down to Austin for that. And that's where I am currently, Austin, Texas. And so that was pretty good. I had a nice New Year's as well here in town. And pretty soon I'll be going to MagFest this upcoming weekend. I'll be going to the Music and Games Festival around Washington, D.C. area at the Gaylord. I'll be meeting up with Summer, who's one of our other hosts. We'll be going to that. I'm excited for that. I've never been to that before. I haven't been to like the Washington, D.C. area since I was a child. So I imagine it'll probably be pretty cold. I don't know. I'm used to the 76 degree December days that we've been having recently.
Yes, I was slipping on the ice this morning. I mean, it's funny because, you know, our country is such a tiny little sort of dot in the middle of the ocean. And then, you know, I sort of forget how vast the states are sometimes. And it's sort of absurd that it's one country because it's a continent. It's a continent. It's a continent.
Really
it's a country.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to get to the capital of your country?
Like by plane or by?
I mean, it's ridiculous that that's like the default option.
Yeah.
It takes me. I'm in the corner of my country, and it takes me 2.5 hours to get to the capital.
To like drive there?
Like, yes, drive or train.
Right,
and getting the plane would be absurd.
Well,
so
look, that's where you've already lost me because we do not even have it like a solid rail infrastructure.
Yeah.
Really. Like, I don't know. But it would take a lot longer than that. It's I'm a few entire UKs away from where I am currently to get to Washington, D.C. But hey, look, we could talk geopolitics later. I'm excited for that. I think it's going to be a really good time. And and I will say a couple other little things. I did finally get micro SD express card. So I now have a normal amount of games installed on my Switch 2.
Oh my God, you didn't have one for your Switch 2?
No, I mean, they've been so expensive. I was like, I feel like I could hold off for like a Christmas present on this one. And I finally got one. So that was really nice. So shout outs to my dad. What was loaded in then?
Did you have like 2 games on your Switch 2?
Pretty much, yeah. I was just doing like a revolving door carousel of like AAA games, like as they would go through it. I don't know. Most of the stuff I play is indies anyway, so it was never a huge deal. But it's nice to have some breathing space. And then also, I did get a little package. We got a baby's first brand deal potentially coming in. I got a little Switch 2 case. I'm not going to talk too much more about that right now because I'm still working out some logistics, and I am still like trying it out, but maybe next week I'll kind of give a review on some of that came in. But that was really nice to finally be recognized enough as a podcast to be given a thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I got my first swag. So
that's very cool. I look forward to hearing that. What's the plan for MagFest? Like, are you sort of going to just kind of wander around? Are you going to do anything there for the show?
Yeah, no, I'm not doing anything for Switch Headz. I mean, I'm there, I guess, representing Switch Headz, but we're not doing a panel or anything. I'm kind of just checking it out at the moment. I'm just a huge fan of game music in general. And I'm kind of hoping that there will be some sellers that are selling like bootleg video game vinyls, because that's been something that I've been collecting a lot of recently. Nice. I actually this morning, I got a message from somebody who's selling a copy of the Pilot Wings Super Nintendo soundtrack. And
did they hunt you down?
No, I made a post in a Facebook group. I was like, I'm searching this out, but it was like the cheapest you would go was like $150 for it. And I was like, I'm unemployed at the moment. I think I'm gonna be a little bit smarter. About to go to MagFest. So yeah. But anyway, I think with that out of the way, let's get to a little bit of shout outs because we do have a few to talk about. We've been doing shorts recently and a lot of social media reels and videos and whatnot. So I wanted to give a shout out to some people over there. But firstly, on YouTube, Hans Gauger said, I want to watch David stream that Horror Princess game. That'll happen soon, Hans, I promise. Hans is my ride or die in my Twitch chat, so I appreciate that. Alfredo Cito says, I'm looking forward to Splatoon Raiders. Over on TikTok, we had Pond Hopper, who said, I would be so stoked if they remade Ocarina of Time, but not just updated graphics like the 3DS version. If they also made the world bigger with more side quests, that would be incredible. I agree. We talked about that in our predictions episode
Can we talk about that after the shout-outs?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do you have to say about it right now, about an Ocarina remake?
I think it would be sort of agonizing. It would be the sort of agony and ecstasy all at the same time, right? It's because for me, we're about the same age, right? So, that was a sort of absolutely pivotal game of my childhood. Exploring the giant world in Ocarina of Time was, sort of a marvelous thing. And so I have sat there and I've thought, would I want Ocarina of Time, like just looking like Breath of the Wild? Because, that land is the size of the Great Plateau. Surely they can knock it out in like a week over at Nintendo. Right. But that's the thing. Would you want it to change? This is always the dilemma with remakes, So I think back to Samus Returns on the 3DS, which does a lot to make the game much more accessible than the Game Boy game. But, there is something about the kind of endless caverns and the kind of just crushing, not monotony. Monotony is the wrong word, but the feeling that you get from playing that game on the Game Boy that isn't captured in that. So
right.
If you mess with it, then does it take away some of the magic? Is it just...
I mean, I think this is why you also have it on NSO, right? I mean, like the original's always there.
That's true.
If you want to emulate it, you can emulate the 3DS remake, which already came out, and those have HD texture packs and everything like that. True. So that's what I've been doing recently. Actually, I installed some HD texture packs, and that's been a ton of fun. So that's why I like having games remade. But it's always like, should we even be remaking good games? I feel like we should maybe exclusively remake bad games just so we can and make them better, you know?
I mean, that's half of what our podcast is about.
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember this game? It was terrible. How can we make it good?
Exactly.
I mean, the punching bag for that is always Urban Champion for the NES, which I do have a bit of a soft spot for. Like, it's fun for about 14 minutes, and then you're like, okay, I'm sort of done with this. But you know, I think remaking something like that would be amazing and sort of left field and unexpected.
I hope so.
And Ocarina of Time, because you can access it. You were saying it's on NSO, right? So if you can access it and experience it, why is it necessary? Something like I've been convinced, in fact, that they're going to remake a Zelda because it's too soon for a big 3D Zelda. You know, we had a new 2D Zelda in Echoes of Wisdom, you know, not traditional Zelda, some people might argue, because you're playing as Zelda.
Sure.
But it is.
It's much needed, I think. Yeah.
Yes, it's a fantastic entry, and anybody who has a problem with that is just an idiot. But it's you know, it's a fantastic game. So I think, you know, for the sake of kind of time saving and things like that and accessibility, I would imagine something like a remake of Minish Cap or the Oracle games or something like that. You just go, yeah, I can see that being a quick and easy win, particularly something like Minish Cap, which is, you know, beloved and very different from other Zelda games. You've got the shrinking mechanic, which is a really unique thing in that.
I think it would fit in well with what Grezzo's been doing also with the remakes.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
Anyway, we talked about this a lot on that episode, and I think we'll be getting something for Zelda's 40th anniversary as we'll talk about some of these anniversaries a little later in the show. But one last shout out that I did want to give. This was on Instagram, and this is from Skylar Fish 305. This is in reference to our Golden Heads episode where we gave out a Golden Heads award for the best Nintendo theme park food. Skylar Fish 305 says, as a theme park enthusiast that has visited over 30 parks across different countries, Orlando's DK Crush Float is the one park food item that has made me feel like the critic from Ratatouille at that one scene, and Osaka's didn't come close. So I really enjoyed that comment. It was very visceral. I love getting a very visceral comment.
That's lovely. How wonderful that they were given that experience.
Exactly. Yeah, great stuff. Thank you very much to all of you for the shout outs. If you too would like to be shouted out, listener, please drop us a line down in the comments of the YouTube version of this episode below, or you can hit us up on social media. Like we said, we've been doing a lot of reels. And other than that, if you could just review the show on Apple or Spotify, share the show with a friend. Word of mouth goes a really long way. We'll have more information at the end of the show of different ways that you could hit us up. But I think with all that out of the way, let's get into the news, because it is indeed all news this week. Are you ready for this, George?
Well, people will see my sort of lack of journalistic chops, but I'm ready. I'm ready to give it a go. Yeah.
Well, I think that there's no time like the present to cut your teeth on the beat.
Why not? on the premier Nintendo podcast.
Exactly. I mean, that's what it's called that for a reason. But we're going to start here with awesome games done quick. AGDQ happens once a year, twice a year if you include summer games done quick. And right now, it is currently live. I've got a little bit of a video of what we're recording at the moment live. There's a Sonic Adventure run going on right now on the Dreamcast. But so far, it has raised $200,000 for the Prevent Cancer Foundation. Every time it happens, it's like a holiday season for me. I always have it on in the background while I'm working. Do you ever check out any speedrunning or anything like that, George? Is that for you?
I do, but I'm sort of not a devotee. So, like, I like the sort of quirky, offbeat ones. I think there was maybe a dog playing Gyromite once on the NES, which is just incredible. And you go, okay, that's something that I have to see.
Yeah.
And I suppose with speedrunning, I think I get the sort of crushing realization of how average I am at games when you see these people who are you just think, how can you operate at that level of sort of reflexes and just timing? And I must have died about 14 to 16 times at the moment on a boss on Silk Song. And you know, and I don't like watching sort of walkthroughs for games, and I don't do guides and things. So I know that I can do it. And I also know that if I looked it up online, I would see somebody do it without getting hit, and just like reading comments as
on
well.
On a DDR dance pad or something like that. Yeah,
it just kills me. But no, it's, you know, what they achieve is incredible, and also the fact that it's for charity is just so admirable and incredible. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
It's a great time. I was actually hoping to go to AGDQ this year, but then I decided instead to go to MagFest. So hopefully I'll be hitting up Summer Games Done Quick this summer. I think it's in Minneapolis.
Yeah, nice.
But just a little bit of a shout out. That is streaming on YouTube now for the first time. This has usually always been on Twitch, but it's been really nice to be able to just pull it up on YouTube, throw it on my TV. It's been a good time. And as far as some of those more quirky runs, there was already one person who did a Super Mario World run using a one-handed controller only. And so that was pretty exciting.
Why do you have to make me feel bad about myself? Like how is this possible? I mean, I suppose if you had the D-pad and like run and jump, you only need run and jump, right? That's all you need.
It was impressive nonetheless. Oh, but if you say you can do it, then I'm going to hold you to it.
It's a complete lie. There's no way. There's just no way. Was it with the Pokeball controller or something? Like,
no, it was like an old school like accessibility controller, like for the Super Famicom back in the 90s or whatever. But awesome. Very interesting stuff. But we'll move on to our next bit of news here, and that involves game key cards and Nintendo's hardware for their cards in general. There's been a rumor that has come out recently from a publisher basically saying that, their game was going to be a game key card at first, but then they've changed their mind because Nintendo has said that they are making smaller game cards that basically, before I think the only Switch 2 game cards that existed were 64 gig cards.
64-bit.
Yeah. No. We're out of the N64 era. Yeah, I've got it on the mind. But obviously for, somebody who's making smaller games, indies or whatever that are like under, 8 gigs or something like that, that's a huge waste of money for them. So they end up going for game key cards instead. But allegedly, according to these people, this is a rumor, Nintendo has started producing smaller cards. So I know game key cards have been a huge sticking point with a lot of gamers that have been very annoyed that, especially with a limited space that's on the Switch 2, having to fill it up, with these giant games or even just smaller games where they could fit on a card, but they choose not to. Since then, I think the company that leaked this was like, oops, we weren't supposed to say anything with this. We don't actually know anything, so who knows if this is actually true, but it does seem realistic. I think that we're in an era now of Nintendo actually like listening to customers and owning up to some of their mistakes, even if just a little bit. But what do you think about this, George?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, Joy-Con drift. Let's just bury that and never talk about this ever again.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings, and ultimately, you will land wherever you land on this. You might think, oh, it's absolutely fine to have a game key card. I still own the game. For me, I mean, I think that's the sort of key phrase is owning the game, right? Anything that you have, and again, it makes me sound like an old man, but I don't care. I have like such an ownership mentality. So anything that's on your device that's digital, if a company decides to go, do you know what, yoink, then you can't do anything about it. You can't, retrieve that. There will be things in place that you sign that say, yes, you can do that if you want to, essentially when you're purchasing that game. So anything, you can see I've got like a small physical part of my physical library behind me. I just think actually physically owning stuff is important. You can then go, do you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going to recoup some of my money from it. I'm going to pass it on. I'm going to gift it to somebody. Owning things is just important to me. And, you kind of have the ethical quandary of going, it's more plastic and it's more metal and it's more damaging for the environment. So like that part, I don't love that. But, not to get all sort of socialist revolution, but I just think sort of end stage capitalism is going, you're going to pay for things and not actually own anything, which I hate. I hate the idea of that. My kids loved watching the Mario movie on Netflix. Gone. Okay, so we can't watch that anymore. I would rather go, do you know what, I'll spend a tenner and buy a DVD and then they can watch it whenever they want to. So for me, it's if that does mean, that smaller, particularly indies and things can get their, shot to go, hey, this is our product, please buy this, please invest in this. I'd be more happy to make that investment. I find it hard to shift the idea of digital ownership of games because I just like owning a game. And, the modern era means I've had to make that change for certain things and certain experiences because it is the only way to experience them. Sure. But I always prefer having the cartridge, even if it is, and it is more of a faff, but I don't care because I have it. It's mine. It's mine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm of two minds about this. I mean, obviously, I think this is good. I don't like the idea of game key cards, and I think that it is Nintendo kind of reading the room on like, probably the next generation of consoles I can't imagine that the PS6 and the next Xbox are going to have any physical games whatsoever. I mean, they've already been doing the kind of like code on a disc thing already with a lot of their games. So, I feel like this is Nintendo reading the tea leaves, but at the same time, they have been this one company that's kind of held, their stance here, and they're the only ones actually doing physical cards, which are probably more expensive than discs as well to produce. But I'm a digital only person. I've been that way since the beginning of the Switch One. I see some Wii U discs behind you there. I had some Wii U back in the day, but that was pretty much the last generation that I actually collected games on. So I don't know that it's like environmental concerns. It's more like, I'm just being lazy more than anything. I like just having everything on me at all times.
It's really convenient. Like that's the thing. They can't argue that there are benefits. You can have a game instantly. There are no problems with it getting to you. If your system doesn't break, your game doesn't break. Obviously, any of these can break at any time, and I have to physically replace it. And also, you have your entire library in one place. There are so many things that make you go, it's the smart decision to make to buy all this digitally. For me, it's just that I can't do anything with this thing that I've bought. Sure, which just sounds mad. But if I go, do you know what? I want to make a few £100, I'll sell a bunch of these games that I don't play anymore if I want to, but and keep the ones that I really want to.
Right.
I've dug out my Wii U and I played Nintendo Land the other day because I have it.
There's great party game. That's a great Christmas game right there.
Nintendo Land is I like this. I can't get sidetracked on this because it is one of the best multiplayer party games of all time. How have you not done anything more with it, Nintendo? We have an episode on it and it kills me.
I mean, they could do it. They could do it with now we're sidetracking, but it's with game share and everything like that. You could do that.
Just do it. Consoles. It's mad. That was the big thing with Wii U, right? Was asymmetrical gameplay. Not everybody's doing the same thing at the same time. You can do that with Switch 2 and game share. Easy. Yeah. So please bring that back. But it's just the fact that I have them. I have them there and I can set them up whenever I want and I can play them whenever I want. And with digital, I just always think, do you know what? If they decide that there's something wrong with this game, they'll take it away. I love a show called Community, and they removed an episode from Netflix, and you just think, okay, I can never watch
the Dungeons and Dragons episode too, which is one of the best ones.
Best ones. And I had it. Oh, this is embarrassing. I had it on DVD, and I left it at somebody's house. And we then broke up, so I don't own it anymore.
See,
and that's the pitfalls of ownership, I guess. But
I hear horror stories about people that have all their cartridges in their like a carrying case with their console, and then they lose that, and it sucks to lose the console. But then if you bought all those games, you're fucked, And so I think it's it's double edged. And I was saying this to a friend the other day who was asking me about like Blu-ray players or whatever, and it was like, hey, what kind of Blu-ray player should you get? And I was like, well, I gave a opinion, but I was like, look, I'm not even really a big Blu-ray person. It's like I picked my battles with physical media collecting, and I went the records route. I've got a big record collection. I really enjoy listening to music that way, but it's like I kind of just don't have A, the bank account, and B, the like space in my home to just also, like commit to all this physical media, right?
Yeah, and in terms of collectibles, I mean, vinyl is like the sexiest collectible you can go for. So
I've been saying this.
You picked well. How does nobody else see this?
Yeah, exactly. It's not impressing anyone, sadly, but maybe that'll change in 2026. I'm gonna only get on the dating app for record collectors, whatever that is.
I've got goosebumps. If that, I mean, it might be the icy roads outside, but I've got goosebumps if that.
Okay, that is helping me. Thank you. That's why I brought you on, George, is just to rizz me up. But anyway. We'll move on from this. I do hope that Nintendo makes some of these smaller carts, but I think our next bit of news involves another bit of Nintendo sales information, and this is about the Mario Kart World Bundle. So whenever this was coming out, Nintendo said that this was going to be a limited deal, right? They said that this is not going to be produced past the end of the year. I don't think a lot of people believed that because, obviously Nintendo has been pushing the Mario Kart 8 bundle every holiday for the original Switch.
It's going to turn up every Black Friday. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. But, Nintendo has said, they put out a tweet recently that was like, hey, get it while supplies last because we are no longer producing this anymore, right? So they have officially come out and said it. And I think, some of that I'm taking with a grain of salt. I'm sure that there will be future bundles. Maybe it's just this particular launch bundle. But I think also, we've been talking a lot, and we'll talk more at the end of this episode about sales numbers. But it's like, the price of the Switch is almost inevitably going to go up. So I think that them being like, hey, $500 for the Mario Kart bundle with the system, and obviously I'm talking in US money here. It's different where you are, but it's like, we basically, they even said in it, they were like, you can get it now for a savings of like, $32 or something like that. They gave like a percentage of savings, and even Kit and Krista were like, yo, Nintendo never brings up actual dollar amounts
money
in their like ads, and that's kind of like maybe, sounding the alarm. But apparently Nintendo says they're done producing this right now. But what do you think about this, George?
It's a tricky one. Like I think I can't believe that it's never going to turn up again. Effectively, all they need to do is print a box and stick a code on their Switch, and then they just go, there you go. It's interesting. I listened to your predictions episode, and you were saying about, I think, was there a bit of a disagreement about whether or not the price of the Switch would go up between you and somebody else? I think we all agreed that it was going up, but it was kind of just by how much, Right. Okay. Right. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into sales numbers now as well, but I think the thing for me, people saying like it's not sold very well. It's not been it has sold ridiculous amounts already, but the sort of overall gaming numbers are down on the holiday period. Is that it just feels like companies are sort of forgetting that it's a hobby, and I sound like such an old man on this show so many times already, but there was a time, back in the Wii days or whatever, I would just hoover up games because they all felt affordable. And I think doing anything you can to make something which is a luxury item feel affordable, to then sort of turn your back from that seems mad. It just seems ridiculous. I don't know why you would do it. But, why not keep both on offer?
Yeah.
Unless you think you're going to, maybe they think they're going to sell that many copies of Mario Kart World that it doesn't bother. Actually, they'll just make more money for their shareholders. That's very possible, very feasible. It just seems like a strange one. It seems like such an enticing offer. Why wouldn't you just sort of keep it for the person that goes, you know what, I'm going to buy this for my kid. And, oh, great, I can get this game for X amount of money right off the bat, as opposed to having to then shell out some additional money.
Well, we're kind of in a dark situation now because, now Nintendo's going to have to, like, if this is true and they're not bundling this anymore, they're going to have to face the music on how many people are actually going to buy Mario Kart at $80. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it feels like the reason they made it $80 was for the purpose of this bundle, right? So it's like, it felt like a very short-term gains sort of situation that they're doing, And so it's like, if they're not having this bundle in the future, now they just have $80 games that are available. And so it's like, and not that they didn't already. And I mean, even if you count, Kirby plus its DLC, the Switch 2 edition, that's $80 as well. Yeah. So it's like, I wonder what pricing is going to look like this year, and I'm kind of like holding on to my seat,
it's
and
hideous.
I'm like really scared for some new announcements. So much money,
and it's the first time, since I've been buying games for myself. Genuinely, I worked when I was a young teenager, sort of 14. I've been buying games for myself for almost my whole life. Since I could make money, I bought an N64 with my own money, all that kind of stuff. And it's the first time where had to go like, I can't buy this game I want, and I just can't. I can't justify it because it is too much money for this. And
well, let's get real. Nintendo should be sending both of us codes for all of their games.
Just do it, man. I'm covering so many of your games, but it's hard. It's hard making that choice. And to be honest, I've never spent on a game the sort of what they say, it's going to be this price. I bought Mario Kart World Physical. I didn't buy it at the price it said it's going to be because retailers, it's different in the UK. So I know you guys, I think you have like your RRP or something. And
MSRP. Yeah.
That's it. And it is that price, right? Everywhere. Like it just doesn't budge.
It can go down like over the holiday. Like I know, like for instance, we were seeing like $450 Black Friday stuff from some retailers for the Mario Kart bundle year, which was huge. I think that was actually a really good deal.
Yeah, so here we just have, retailers set their price. And so obviously it's not a race to the bottom, like they're not giving away games. But often you can get them sort of for £10 or £15 cheaper than, they sort of press release says that these games are going to cost. So I never go sort of the full whack, but it makes me think, okay, I'm going to wait 3 years and see if I can get this game cheaper. And if not, I might just never play this game, which breaks my heart. But, I want to experience these titles, but
maybe 3 years on, Mario Kart World will finally have some DLC and added content.
I was an idiot and bought that one quickly. But, I would have brought Metroid Prime 4 week one when it came out, but I said, no, I don't have the money. I said to my wife, if you want to get me a Christmas present this year, buy me that. I would love it. That'd be fantastic.
Did
she did, yes, but I haven't played it yet. I haven't started because we'll get into that later. We'll get into that.
Yeah, that's coming up.
But I just, it's agony, and I've been scouring deals. Like I might pick up. I never got for myself Rayman, like the original Switch title ages ago, Rayman Legends.
Oh yeah, great game.
I loved No Man Heroes. I love No More Heroes for the Wii. So I never picked up 3, and I can get 2 of them for £20 now from Argos. So I was thinking okay, do you know what? I'm going to scoop up some games that I never played that I want to play, and that will sort of keep me going. But yeah, the big tentpole ones, it really makes me worried about. I just sort of think if it ever gets more than that, realistically in the next sort of few years, I just think I don't want to be priced out of my hobby, basically, and I think a lot of people are.
Well, I think we could use this as a good opportunity to move into our an upcoming news item here, and that's about Devon Pritchard being the new CEO of Nintendo of America, because I think if Devon Pritchard wants to make a splash as the new Nintendo of America president, it would be a great time to bring back Nintendo Selects. I don't know if you guys had those in the UK.
Yeah, we did.
But yeah, it was like Nintendo Selects all the way through to the Wii U. They would come down to, it was $20 here for some of those.
Yeah.
Maybe it was $30 for the Wii U era, but I think even if they brought them down to like $30 or $40, that would be huge, just as that being the permanent price. But, I do want to give some lip service here. Obviously, Devon Pritchard is the new president of Nintendo of America. Doug Bowser is officially out as Nintendo of America president.
It's the best name.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you ever live up to that?
Yeah, and I think Doug did a pretty good job, all told, especially with navigating the waters of this current financial recession that's going on in the US. And I think a lot of the pricing issues that people were complaining about early on, clearly they didn't stop people from buying Switch 2s. So he is now out. Devon Pritchard is in. Devon Pritchard has been a part of Nintendo of America for a long time, but in the legal department. Bowser kind of came up through sales. We'll have to see how Devon runs the company. Obviously, Nintendo of America isn't making like big overall worldwide decisions, but I do think that, the US is a huge market for Nintendo. And, if you look back to someone like Reggie Fils-Aimé, there's a lot that the NOA president can do to sway, the company as a whole, looking at, for instance, what he did with the Wii Sports backend and whatever. So I think that it would be smart of Devon right now to kind of read the tea leaves, especially with a bit of a sales slump that's been happening, and maybe bring back some sales, win back some favor with some gamers. Yeah. What do you think about this?
Well, so, I mean, he had massive shoes to fill, right? Because Reggie Fils-Aimé was such a huge presence. And you hear about the sort of legendary things of, yes, including that, including Wii Sports as a packing title, him sort of really gunning for that. That's very impressive. I think really the sort of the shift for me, just sort of take the presidents out of the equation for a second, was a sort of Satoru Iwata era where it sort of felt, and maybe it was just a very well-groomed image, that kind of thing, that it felt very consumer friendly, and it feels like they are moving away from that to sort of more businessy business decisions. And I like, that might be unfair, that might not be true, but things like the Selects program existing back in that era, it doesn't feel like a coincidence that kind of thing isn't around now. I think Doug Bowser had an incredibly hard job. I mean, his name helped, like they give him instant cachet.
It's funny. That was like the main thing that anyone knew about him.
Just hilarious. Because do you remember, did he take over during the Switch era?
Yeah.
Or was it? He must have done, right?
It was during, because I think it was 2020 even. It was after we had started the podcast, and we started that in 2019. Okay. So it might have been pre-pandemic. Yeah.
Fine. Okay. So, he's been there for a few years. I mean, imagine taking over a company that is the producer of the Nintendo Switch. Like, hey, print some more money today.
Yeah.
So interesting, that to take over at that point. And then I think very impressive that he, obviously saw through the Switch 2. I think that must have been, I'm going to see the launch of this console and then I'm going to step aside. Because obviously there would have been internal stuff going on for months and months and months.
Yeah, I'm sure this ascendancy has been planned for a very long time. Yeah.
So it's interesting, I wonder how much impact he had on Switch 2. There are decisions that baffle me. I don't understand. They've said, well, welcome tour, we made it and it took a lot of effort. Yeah, but pack it into the game. Because again, it just feels like I'm never going to spend that much money on this sort of weird little experience. Pack it in so I know what my Switch 2 does, like Wii Sports did. It just seems like a no-brainer. So, I wonder why decisions like that didn't go that way. Maybe there's more pushback from Japan now. Maybe they don't have the influence that they did in America. It's all speculation because we don't know what goes on.
I think it's when Nintendo's up at the top of their game, and they have been for a very long time now in the gaming industry. They've been the industry leader as far as sales are concerned, as far as cultural cachet is concerned.
Yeah.
I think that it becomes harder to speak up to NCL, the Japanese like headquarters, when the proof is in the pudding on sales, and I think that yeah, exactly. And I think that a big reason why, Reggie was able to make some of those calls when it came to like the Wii early on was because they were in the slump of the GameCube, right? And I think that, it was the same with the Switch. It was like, I think they took big swings with Switch, and that was because they were coming off of Wii U. And so it's like, when you're up at the top, everybody just acts a lot more conservatively, right? And then I think it also becomes harder to stand up to your boss, essentially, right? And well, even if you think the Western market better than they do, which is probably true to some extent with Doug Bowser, because like I said, he'd been at the company for a really long time. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's a bit of a mentality like that. But I think that like as we're going into this year, like these are really uncertain times, and I think that we are like almost pretty firmly in a recession now in the United States. It's not like exactly officially a recession, but we'll be we keep hinting to what we're going to be talking about at the end of the episode here, but it's like
lovely.
It is not looking up as far as what people are going to be able to spend their money on. So I think that Devon Pritchard has a lot to prove, I think, going into this year, but it's always a balancing act on like how much do you listen to the like really annoyed Nintendo haters out there, because that's become its own whole kind of like cottage industry on the internet right now. So, and the numbers speak for themselves, but also people are clearly agitated.
They're agitated, but they're still buying the Switch 2 and they're still buying the game. So how much does it matter? I mean, the thing I would be more curious about would be if things didn't go her way, what would she change her name to buy some goodwill from the Nintendo fans? We've had Doug Bowser. Would she change it to Devon Peach or
Devon Pritchard? Yeah.
Devon Pritchard. Devon Pritchard. He's nailed it. Right? Didn't have time to think. Didn't have to think about it.
That's years of improv comedy there, baby. It just comes naturally for me. Yeah.
Why are you up on the stage right now?
Good
Devon
question.
Pritchard, I mean, I think it's hard. She's come over. She's taken over the reins at a tough time because things are more expensive to produce because of lots of worldwide issues. And they have to make, as a company, they have to make as much money as possible for their shareholders. That's what companies are obliged to do. So, they have business obligations in that respect. But, there is a real danger that actually if you alienate consumers and you make things too expensive and you do things that people think are, to be frank, a bit shitty, that they will just walk away and they'll talk with their wallets. And, I don't know. I don't know if there's a danger of that happening. I mean, I don't know a lot of people with Switch 2s. I know a handful of close friends that have them, but a lot of people have said, I don't see the reason to own one yet. So without the kind of killer app or without it being affordable, I wonder if it will be, another, I mean, it's never going to be another Wii U. I think it's already sold more than the Wii U, but in terms of, in comparison to the Switch, it's, and I don't know if anything could ever hit the heights of the Switch. It's insane. But
well, let's table this for right now, because I want to hit some of these points a little bit later once we get to our last bit of the show. But real quickly, I did want to talk a little bit about something that was kind of humorous and also kind of sad for me that happened during the holiday sale. Cyberpunk 2077 went on sale. It was on a deep discount. Yeah, it was 75% off. It was going for like $17, which is less than the price of the DLC to that game. and it went on sale and then was promptly changed to be 25% off instead. CD Projekt Red did say that anyone that bought it at that price will have those fulfilled. I took a day and was like, do I need to get this because I have it on Xbox, and do I need a blah, 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 blah. I really wish I'd grabbed it because I think it would have been very fun to play on Switch too, but that was a mistake. It's back up. Obviously, all those sales are over right now, but this was a little bit of a PSA maybe that I wanted to share with everybody that we did talk about this in our Discord. So if you are interested in finding one-off deals like this is a call to action to join the Discord for Super Switch Headz, because we're always on this kind of stuff, and if I had been a little bit more proactive, I would have been playing this right now.
This is my problem though, right? This is harking back to what I was saying about the digital thing. Great that they're saying we'll honor anybody that bought at that price, but how horrible that they could just say, oh, whoops, yoink, and take it back from you and give you your money back, and then say, yeah, you can buy it at this price if you want to. Yeah. And obviously, like, it's unless there's a serious problem at a high street retailer, it's not going to have 75% knocked off. Yeah. But if it did happen and you bought it, it's yours, and there's nothing they can do about it. So
this is one of those things where I'm like, okay, what do I? Sales are just like, ooh, I got to get that because it's on sale. It's like, no, you don't. I don't need that. I've already played that game. Like, yeah, I'd love to play it again. I'd love to play it on the go. But it's like, I don't need. I've got so many fucking games. I do not need to play Cyberpunk again. You know what I mean? Even though I do quite love that game. I've been a Cyberpunk defender since day one. I think when it came out, everybody really hated on that game. I've always been a fan. But definitely, if you got it, sound off in the comments. I'm happy for you. I'm not jealous at all. It's pretty good.
I'm trying not to go back to giant games, particularly giant games that I've played. Like I'm trying. The only game I went back to recently was Mole Mania. So we did the episode of Mole Mania for the podcast, and there's a Game Boy Color hack for it. So I just thought, oh great, okay, I'll play it. So I'm trying really hard to just play one game at a time, get through a game, start a new game, not a giant backlog. But Mole Mania was a nice distraction because it is one we can just do like a room and then leave and then turn it off and it's okay. So yeah, I'm trying really hard not to go back, to look forward, not go back. So
I think that's a good call. I think a lot of people are doing that. I think as this recession grows, a lot of people are playing retro games and old games in addition to that. But anyway, we'll table that again. We keep. We should probably talk about it now, but I'm going to move on. Yeah. But anyway, I think we'll move on to a really interesting interview that came out in Famitsu with an unnamed Nintendo employee talking about Metroid Prime 4.
Oh, I don't know this.
Yeah, and this was actually really, really interesting. This was translated recently, and there were some really kind of unexpected revelations from this, and kind of something that's a little bit out of character for Nintendo, kind of talking about maybe some of the mistakes that they've made in regards to a lot of the feedback people have given about this game. Some of the highlights, I think, from this interview in Famitsu that were interesting was basically saying that, they had decided back in 2017 that this game was going to follow the kind of open world styling of Breath of the Wild, as that was very, very popular at the time, and that game proved very successful. And essentially, they were like, as development shifted to retro and as they started putting their own spin on the game, they kind of realized that like, oh, gamers' tastes have changed, and people are looking for more fast-paced games in the FPS shooter genre specifically. And I think basically they were like, by that point, development had already restarted from whoever they had doing it, Bandai Namco, and they were already a little too late. So they just ended up sticking with it and kind of doing that half measure of, we're using the kind of Ocarina of Time style hub as the open world. And so Nintendo was kind of admitting a little bit of an L there, which I thought was pretty fascinating. You don't see that happen very often. There was something else that was interesting to talk about from this interview as well, but I know you haven't played the game yet, but I mean, I'm sure you've seen the discourse. Do you think it's...
Yes.
Is this something you'd like to see more from Nintendo, kind of admitting where they've made some potential mistakes?
That's really interesting. And, super interesting that it's perhaps been put forth by somebody who's not willing to say, hello, it's me saying this for obvious reasons.
It was just Nintendo.
I mean, I don't know. I think I've developed games for the Playdate. There's my little Playdate. It's up there somewhere. And these are teeny tiny 2D games.
Sure,
and
love the Playdate.
It is hard, man. Making a game, getting anything, just getting it over the line feels borderline impossible sometimes. So, I always think with something like that, you can go, yeah, maybe we've done this, maybe we've done that. But actually, particularly games of that size, they take so long to make. If if tastes change in the 5, 6, 7 years that you're making it, why would you pivot? Stick to your plan. I mean, it shocks me to hear that it was sort of considered to be open world, because that's so not Metroidvania. But then you could argue, Breath of the Wild wasn't what people had come to expect from Zelda. People expected dungeons and a sort of slightly more linear format, and the like little puzzle boxes that you go through. The original NES Zelda, obviously, actually very similar to Breath of the Wild in that you can just wander off wherever you want. So maybe that would have been interesting, but I don't know. Particularly Metroid, whether it's 2D or 3D. It's the kind of isolation and exploration, right? They're the kind of key things I always think about with Metroid. So obviously, I know the isolation is sort of not the case in Metroid Prime 4.
There's a lot of sections of the game where you are completely divorced from any chatterbox talking in your ear.
I'm not going to dump on a game that I haven't played. But it's it's interesting to hear that they had done that, and I think yes, a lot of the discourse is it feels like two games kind of smashed together. So I'm going in with that kind of expectation from that. I just think it would be fascinating to get like a deeper dive into it. I don't think we'll ever get that. We'll never get it.
Well, Kiwi Talks will give us, developer interviews in a decade or whenever, when all the NDAs run out, right? As he's been one to do. But no, I think for me, what was very illuminating about this was how much seemingly was carried over from that original idea of the game. Yeah. Like whenever Bandai Namco was working on it, or whenever Nintendo basically was like, here's the kind of game we want you to make, because they hired a studio to make it, right? And then when they restarted development, basically this interview is saying that, those ideas from that initial plan were moved over to retro. So that includes the open world aspect of it. It also includes the psychic abilities. They said that was something that held over from the original game as well. And I think the words that they said here was that this game is pretty much divorced from the changing of times, which I think is an interesting way to put it.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because then you go, but then how much did they change any of the story? Was it, the mechanics stayed the same, but they made their own story? Did they have to stick to the same story?
Right. How much was retro instrumental in the actual
control did they have?
Yeah. How much of it is their game, and how much were they hired to do?
They're the Prime makers. They make Metroid Prime games. So did they say, okay, we've kind of got this, we want it to be like this, but do your thing, or this is the game, this is what we agreed on, please make it work? Because they are completely different points to start from, and I don't know. We'll never see that. We'll never know that. So, until like you said, a decade has passed. So it's fascinating. I think it's interesting that somebody's come forward to say that. It makes me a bit sad, because I just think, just celebrate the game that came out.
Yeah,
whatever you think of it, I think it's a massive achievement.
Part of it to me is I'm a little disappointed that Nintendo is like apologizing for this, because I think it's feeding more into, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword. I'm like, I think it's good that they're more open about it. And I was caught off guard when I read this, to be honest, because I don't hate the open world area, right? I mean, it's certainly like, a rhythm breaker. And I think that it's clear that like retro wanted to make one style of game, and there was somebody else trying to make another style of game, and they had to compromise. But it's like, But the end result is not bad at all. Like, the game is great. I really love the game. But it's like, it's just interesting to see them come out. Like, part of me wants them to just completely own it and be like, nope, this is the game we wanted to make, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I'll always welcome any kind of transparency from Nintendo on the creation of some of their IP, because I think so. It's fascinating to get a peek behind the mirror. Something else that came out in this interview with Famitsu was talking about the actual timeline placement of the game as well. Everybody assumed that this was just still in that Metroid Prime timeline where it kind of goes like between Metroid and Metroid 2.
I think I saw a post of yours about this. And yes, it hurts my brain as well. And I don't like it.
So essentially this takes place after Metroid it takes place after Super Metroid, right? Yeah. So that's unexpected, and it certainly lends to some questions. We do have a note here in the show notes from Jordan, who is the resident Metroid lorehead, and he wrote, "Okay, but like after Super Metroid, all of the Metroids are supposed to be extinct, and we don't find out they aren't until Fusion, which is a surprise to Samus. So Silex using Metroid to infect local creatures is weird." And then he said, "I'm thinking about this too much," and I agree, Jordan. You are thinking about this too much. You're thinking about it way more than Nintendo does.
but I get that. But the thing with that would be, well, again, I don't know. No spoilers, please. I don't know.
No spoilers.
Prime 4. So does she think that they're possible? Is it possible that she thinks they're eradicated after Metroid Prime 4? Obviously, there's some sort of weird wormholey thing going on. So I think in that respect, if you go, okay, it's kind of anomalous in its sort of use of Metroids to the extent where you could argue that Samus would think, okay, well that has happened, but it's not something I have to worry about going back to my universe. If you know what makes sense, then you can kind of justify it. I do think it does kind of kill me because timelines and things, people get very obsessed with them, and
Nintendo certainly doesn't care. Fans care way more than Nintendo does, I think.
True. But my argument to that would be that Metroid is the one where they do care, and there is, particularly with the sort of 2D, because the Prime games exist, but Metroid Dread is still Metroid 5. Even says in the trailer, Metroid 5. This is 5 in this story, so that's the one that has like a rock solid timeline. This is Samus's life from Ridley massacre of the planet to the events in Dread where she sort of light spoilers. No, okay. I'm not going to say it because if you don't know it, but if you don't know it, it's so good. If you don't know the end of Metroid Dread, please don't look it up. Please,
sure. Okay, yeah, that's fair to not spoil the end of Dread. That is an amazing reveal.
That moment at the end of Dread where you go like, oh my god, and if you play those games, that's an incredible journey. I always say this. I love Mario All Stars when I was a kid. I had it on the SNES. I got the Wii version. If they could all stars one series, for me it is the 2D Metroid series. Get Mercury Steam to remake all 4 of the games before Dread in the style of Dread and tell that story, and I would pay 80 quid for that and not complain about it.
Well, at the very least, we do have. At the very least, we've got all the Metroid games on the Switch right now.
You can play them all on the Switch. You can play the whole story.
And I would argue that those GBA games have aged incredibly well. I just replayed Zero Mission the other day. So much fun. Really, really great stuff.
If somebody was playing for the first time, would you say play Zero Mission or would you say play Metroid?
Oh, I always recommend, if anyone's starting with Metroid, I say play Zero Mission first.
Yeah, I think I probably would too.
I think the original Metroid, it's great, and I think you can go back, and it's very fun, but it's like Zero Mission is just perfect. It's the perfect starting point.
It's a great game.
Metroid.
I'm so old that I have I still own them somewhere in this heap of an attic of mine at the moment. Hand drawn maps of games I played when I was a kid. I don't get me wrong, I'm too young to be the NES era, but I did play The Legend of Zelda when I was a kid.
Sure.
And because there's no map, so I used to just pause the game, draw the square, connect the whole map up. And I think if you're going to do Metroid and Metroid 2 on the Game Boy, for the love of God, make a map for yourself. That's like, if I could give one piece of advice, and that's where you're going to launch in, just make a map. Make a map. It helps. It's fantastic. Because they are unique experiences. They are worth experiencing, but definitely start with. It's a shame you can't play Samus Returns, the 3DS Samus Returns on your Switch. That's the only bummer. But you can play the whole series, which is just phenomenal. Like it's a great story, and it's a nice timeline. It's a nice Nintendo timeline. So I'm a bit bummed that they're kind of they're going to mess with. And then you got Other M, which is a whole other quandary. And technically, I think Metroid Prime Pinball sits in the time somewhere. It's mad. So
I think Other M is right around this time as well. I'm not sure if it's before or after Metroid Prime 4, but it is in there. I'm not super familiar with Other M's story, but either way, I think just bringing it back to retro. I know they've moved on to something else. I know work continues at Retro. I'm not sure what they're working on, but I imagine, or at least I hope, it's more Metroid Prime. And if they are working on a new Metroid Metroid Prime game. I really hope that now that they're kind of having it all in-house, and they're starting from square one on a game, that they can really make it the way that they want to make it. And I think that, Nintendo's commitment to Metroid continues, sales notwithstanding. But let's go ahead and move on to our next bit of news here, because we do have a few more to hit before we move on to the non-Nintendo news. And that's going to first be about Pokemon's 30th anniversary. Now, the actual 30th anniversary day falls in February. I think it's February 17th, if I'm not mistaken. It's somewhere around there. But Nintendo has revealed the logo. And by Nintendo, I mean the Pokemon Company has revealed the logo for the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. And that includes a fat Pikachu jumping up into the logo and kind of coming out. And so who knows exactly what's going to be happening here. We talked a little bit in our predictions episode about what we expect from Pokemon's 30th anniversary. I think at the very least in February, I would expect, the announcement of Gen 10, which is almost certainly coming this year. But are you excited for Pokemon's 30th? Are you a Pokemon gamer, George?
Yes and no. So I love Pokemon. I have a living dex up to Sword and Shield. Like I used to hunt shinies before it was easy, mate. It's all this kind of stuff. So, I love the series, and Christmas 98 or whatever it was, a lime green Game Boy and Pokemon Red, and it was just my whole life having that game. Incredible. I do go through peaks and troughs with the series. So, like, I got a bit fatigued around Gen 3, which Ruby and Sapphire. Yeah. And then sort of picked it back up with Black and White. And then at the moment, I'm just in a bit of a slump with it. Like I've sort of run out of steam with it again. I haven't completed Scarlet and Violet. I'm not really bothered about it at the moment. I'm sure, when something, maybe after a few years, maybe when my kids are a bit older, I'll probably get into it again. I think, at the very least for the 30th, I would imagine Red and Blue and Green are going to drop on NSO.
I hope so, but I don't know. I think that every year that they'll be putting those out, and they never do.
It's the 30th anniversary. They've got to come over. And being able to train online would be incrediable with that. Did you ever see on Twitter, before Twitter turned to garbage, there were these posts somebody made and there wasn't a playable game, but cutscenes from Pokemon Red and Blue, and they were in the style of the manual. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah, I think so. It was like a fan art kind of thing. Yeah.
Awesome. And they had Pikachu missing Caterpie with a little sort of quick attack and then waddling back to the trainer. And I just think, do you know what? Remake Red and Blue to look like the manual, like that guy did. Happily buy it. I'd probably buy it.
I don't think they should remake Red and Blue again. We already got Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee.
I'd be irritated, but I'd probably also buy it because I'm an idiot.
Of course, you would. Everyone would. I'm still an OG 151 Pokemon. That's where my heart lies. And I will say, it's like watching this kind of reveal of the logo with that original watercolor look for the Pikachu is very nostalgic.
It's lovely.
It's also just shit, man. I remember when that game came out, so it being the 30th anniversary is like, holy fuck.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. My knees just started hurting as soon as I saw the logo. But no, I would love, I think you're right. Like now, if they're ever going to do the Red and Blue, I don't think they'll just be bringing it to NSO or the Game Boy app, because I think they'd probably want to incorporate it with Pokemon Champions and Pokemon Bank and all that stuff. So they'll probably put out an actual app or a release where you can play the games. Because I don't think they want to allow save scumming or rewind or anything like that. No. If they're going to be putting these out, which is kind of a shame, because it's really fun to play those games on emulators for that reason. But if they're incorporating it into their larger Pokemon world, I could see them avoiding that. But either way, we'll have to see what happens. But keep your eyes on the space. We'll be certainly covering lots more Pokemon news as we get into February, when the actual 30th anniversary drops. But I think with that out of the way, let's move on to our next bit of news here. And that concerns some new ratings from Peggy in Europe, over on your side of the earth. Basically, a few days ago, or maybe a week ago at this point, I'm not exactly sure, it came out that Pikmin 3 Deluxe was rated specifically for Nintendo Switch 2. And this has been basically fueling speculation that there might be an upcoming Pikmin 3 Deluxe Nintendo Switch 2 edition release, maybe physically, which is interesting because they just put out a big update for that game that didn't include Switch 2 upgrades. So I don't know if that means that they're going to be packaging this as a Nintendo Switch 2
Switch
edition
2 game. Yeah.
What do you think about this, George?
I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting. Pikmin 4 did numbers. Like Pikmin 4 did very well.
Yeah.
And it's, they basically said, yes, Pikmin is one of our core series now.
So, they're really trying to push it as one of their main series.
It's great news as well, because Pikmin, it's just an elite game series. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel. Do you feel the same? Or?
I'm not a huge Pikmin fan, but I appreciate and love Pikmin.
Okay.
I just, I'm not a big RTS guy in general, but
fine.
I'm a fan of the franchise. Yes.
This is true. When I was playing Pikmin 3 originally on the Wii U, every day on the what's it called, the Miiverse, I would write a captain's log. It's quite embarrassing to admit that in real life, but I used to go.
No, not at all. I've missed
Miiverse. Like, hey, we lost a yellow Pikmin today. It was ridiculous, but it was quite cathartic and actually quite nice to look back on. When I can look back on it, it was quite fun. Yeah. So I really enjoy Pikmin. I mean, I'd love a Switch 2 edition. I don't know what they'd add. I'd rather have a Pikmin 5, if I'm being honest.
Right.
Like, if I'm going to have anything, I've played 3, I've experienced 3. 3's great. Again, don't want to look back. Don't want to look back to a game. If they added something substantial, a post-game sort of campaign, maybe I'd pay the 10, 15 quid to upgrade it, because I do love the series. But without something substantial, I don't think I'd dip again.
Well, I think that's a good point that you just said there, and that's that I think having this be rated for Nintendo Switch 2 specifically, I think is essentially confirming that this will not be a free update. No. But it is also a little odd, because one of the other games that was rated was Splatoon 3. Right. And Splatoon 3, you just held up Triforce. There was some Triforce Heroes patent or at least trademark updates, but Nintendo does that all the time. I think as far as the PEGI rating stuff, like, I'm confused by the Splatoon one, because Splatoon 3 got a free update for Switch 2. And it's like, also like the Splatfests are all done. Like that, the game is content complete. Like, are they, maybe this is just like, they're just trying to put boxes in stores, with the Switch 2 logo on them. I just don't know. Yeah.
But there also might be, maybe they've got something planned for when Raiders comes along, because, I think Raiders is a gamble, right? We don't really know what the sort of, do we know what the core of Raiders is yet?
No, not really. We know that it's single player focused, but that's it.
Hunting about, so it feels kind of sort of vaguely Animal Crossing-y, but then I don't feel like that could be the case with Pokopia as well. So I don't really know what to expect from it. And I just wonder if, like, they're maybe going, hey, there's some even more DLC for Splatoon 3. And guess what? Splatoon Raiders come out. Because Splatoon 3 is the juggernaut, right? That's the, like, this will get your attention. But also, look at this other thing we've got for it. We've got Raiders over here as well. So, I wonder if it's just a sort of gateway to creating more content for that Switch 2 content, which will then unlock sort of the door for Raiders.
Totally. I mean, I feel in my heart that the Splatoon 3 news is essentially saying that they're just going to be slapping a Switch 2 logo on Splatoon 3, putting it in stores, and that's what I feel like they're probably doing. What I would want, though, is essentially we've been working on Splatoon Raiders. We're not ready to put out Splatoon 4 yet, but we're going to do new content for Splatoon 3 for the next year or something. I think that would be great. That would get me back into playing Splatoon 3 again, especially with all these Switch 2 upgrades. So I think that would be a cool way to do it. Either way, I think that we'll be seeing a paid Switch 2 edition for Pikmin going forward. So prepare yourself, gamers, for that if you are trying to play that game in 4K. But anyway, it'd be really nice. I will say, last thing I'll say on this, it'd be really nice if Nintendo threw us a couple more bones like they did with Animal Crossing and made some of these $5 or $10 upgrades as opposed to 20.
Please.
I think the $5 upgrade is buying a bit of goodwill with people. I know I'll be doing the Animal Crossing one only because it's a $5 upgrade as opposed to 10 or more.
But this is it. This is what I was saying earlier, right? If it's affordable, if it's a hobby thing and it's affordable and you don't have to justify it, then you'll do it. It's always just a thinking like, oh, can I justify this? Because often it's, no, I can't really.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's just, oh, that's a $5, I can do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Then of course you'll do it. Of course you'll do it.
That's a great point. Anyway, we're going to move on from Nintendo here to some other gaming industry news in general. And sadly, we're going to have to start with a rather intense one here. And that is that Call of Duty co-creator and Respawn co-founder Vince Zampella, who was a major head at EA and Respawn, has died. He was killed in a car crash that happened in, I believe, Los Angeles. It was a couple weeks ago. There is footage of this crash online, which I would definitely not look up. I mean, it was a bit of bad judgment, I will say. He was in a Ferrari, I believe, and was like, zooming out of a tunnel and smashed into a wall or something like that coming out. So it was certainly like, a little bit of affluenza, I believe, that led to a bit of his demise, which is sad to say. I'm not putting any blame on him, but I mean, someone else did die who was in the car. So it's a really sad story all around. There's no way around that. But I think all that out of the way, and whatever you think about Call of Duty or Battlefield or any of these other EA properties, he was a massive legend in the gaming industry. And it's really sad to hear someone die so young. I believe he was still in his 50s. And I think he obviously had a lot ahead of him as far as his influence on the industry. I'm not a huge multiplayer online shooter gamer personally. I mean, this is a Nintendo podcast, obviously. But whenever this happens, we want to at least give our flowers to some of the gaming legends that have lost their lives. Do you have anything to say about Zampella here?
No, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? I think it's strange when people have if you live your life in the public spotlight, something that's tragic, something that's horrible happens, there's sort of scrutiny about it. People feel the need to post their opinion about it or, speak about the person's family. It's all really sad because ultimately it's a human being who presumably has loved ones and people that care about him has died, and isn't here anymore. Regardless of what happened, it's just tragic that things like that happen. So, I might not have liked the games. Doesn't matter. I don't know him, so my opinion doesn't really mean anything on it. It's just it's horribly sad. And all I hope is when things like that happen, that people are sort of respectful of the family and kind of posting things on the video of it. You just think, oh come on, man! Like nobody.
Yeah, it was on like news. It was on the news and stuff like that too. That footage. It was just like, what are we doing here? But it was a horrific crash, and I think obviously be careful out there on the road. Yeah. You hate to see stuff that could have been avoided go down. Yeah. Especially when other people's lives are at stake. But, this is really sad. I've been wanting to actually, this is something I wanted to do at the end of the year last year, but we didn't get around to it. And I think that, I think something I'd like to see in the games industry going forward, something that we see with the Oscars every year is kind of an in memoriam segment at the Game Awards, of the people that lost their lives. Because we're not getting to that point, especially with old age, and that's the age of the industry in general. We're losing titans and legends, every year. And I think that it would be really good just for people to, learn games industry history on a lot of the people that have passed away,
Absolutely. I mean, especially, I think the gaming industry is the biggest industry on earth now. It's past everything else. And I think when you have that with films, it's because, and telly, you go, well, these things have such a massive impact on people's lives. Games have that kind of impact on people's lives. If whenever Koji Kondo passes away, I know that I'll feel incredibly sad because I found his music, it has shaped so many events in my life. And I still listen to Sheik's theme from Ocarina of Time, and I'll just start crying because it's beautiful and it's like locked in as part of my childhood, experiencing these concepts that Sheik talks about that I hadn't ever really thought about. It's all in there, So yeah, I think they should do that. They should honor people that. Whatever impact they have, because games they're a big part of people's lives in a way that they weren't necessarily before. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, moving on. Speaking of other EA related things that are dying, Anthem, the game from BioWare that had very mixed reviews when it came out, is officially going offline by January 12th, and once it goes offline, there is no offline version of this game at all. So the game will become, a coaster, essentially, the Anthem disc that you have.
That's awful.
So that's a little bit of a PSA. If you ever played Anthem, I never knew a ton of people that played Anthem. It was funny. I was listening to an interview with one of my favorite authors, Neil Stevenson, recently, and he was talking about, because a lot of his stuff revolves around online games and whatnot. And they were like, do you actually play any games? And he was like, the only game I play is Anthem. And I'm like, you're the only one I know that actually plays Anthem. But
well done for keeping it alive for as long as you did.
Right. But this is another in a long line of games that, had online components with no offline component that just become inoperable after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I know in the European Union and in the UK, there's been an initiative called Stop Killing Games. I don't know if you're familiar with this, George, but
yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
And that's basically trying to convince UK and EU lawmakers to basically, put in, fines against, companies that don't allow for offline versions of some of their games. I know some of that is like failed in Parliament, at least, like it didn't really go through.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because ultimately you're then you can't force a business to lose money.
Right.
I mean, I suppose the way around that would be, hey, we promise that this will be online for at least 3 years. Or, if there's a sort of a minimum standard that companies, particularly, again, you're buying something, you're saying, I'm buying this because I trust that you will do this. If they've not delivered that, then actually that is an issue. I think the only thing you could do was say, it has to come, anything that is that kind of specific, maybe they have to say you have to guarantee a minimum this.
Right.
I don't know if companies would do that. I mean, I don't sort of tend to go in for games like that for that very reason. I just think it's not, I prefer single player experiences. I don't mind, and I really like couch co-op. Online multiplayer is fine. I don't mind it, but it's not my preferred thing. So, I just think, if there's a minimum sort of standard that they have to meet, great. But otherwise, it's just, and if it's losing their money, then fair enough. That they can't keep it open, that's fair. So I see both sides of it, but it's sucks. It sucks for people that enjoys it, and it sucks for them that they have to close it. Games industry is collapsing in quite a lot of places, which is quite alarming. But it's also alarming because you sort of think the more that happens, the more kind of monopolized things get, and then obviously the more that happens, the more people can charge, and blah blah blah. It's
another thing that's kind of pushing people towards retro games and more single player experiences as well. I think people were kind of tired of this idea when this game came out, and then now here we are at the end of its life, and I think not much has changed. But we'll move on to our next bit of news, and this involves something that we'd actually talked about briefly in a previous episode, and that's Star Wars Racer Revenge. A PS2 game that not a ton of people, even know existed, but for some reason now is getting massively value added. Physical copies of the PS4 re-release of this game are skyrocketing on eBay right now, going for about $300 on average, I think, for physical copies of this game, because Star Wars Racer Revenge is apparently being used in a new PS5 jailbreaking exploit. We saw this, I think, with, I don't know, back in the DS days, or maybe the 3DS. It used to be whenever you wanted to kind of hack a 3DS, there were these like specific I forget which one it was, but it was like DS games that you could put in that kind of were utilized for exploits for jailbreaking and whatnot. I'm a big console modder. I enjoy, especially with some of my old consoles when they no longer have access to eShops or any online capabilities. I enjoy modifying my consoles to be able to run homebrew and whatnot, backups of my games and stuff like that. So I'm all for jailbreaking any tech that you own personally. That's my opinion, that once you own it, it's yours. I think the hardware manufacturers probably have a different idea on that, but it is interesting that this game is the one being used and the prices have gone up so high. But
so funny.
Are you a PS5 gamer, George? Do you have one of these?
No. My a couple of my cousins who I'm quite close with, they're PS5 gamers. I've never been PlayStation. I had an Xbox for a while. Not very happy with Microsoft and Xbox at the moment. It's sort of like my pillar was kind of Nintendo and Xbox. I could play PlayStation games. I had friends who owned them, so I would go and play games with them. My brother-in-law has one, so I go and play on that sometimes. But no, it's never one for me. I mean, hilarious about it, sort of breaking them. That's very funny. And I got to speak to you about modding because our bonus podcast for our Patreons is called the Wee Boys. There is a reason. It's because I am in the process of attempting to mod a Wii to be a very Wii, as in small, handheld.
Okay, cool. You're like shaving the motherboard and everything like that?
Never modded anything. Definitely going to break it. So I might need to hit you up for some advice. But
sure. Yeah.
It's just funny. Like it's hilarious that these funny mad exploits. Who would have thought that would be a weird exploit that could happen? But you know. Yeah, once it's yours, do what you want with it. You avoid the warranty, so if anything goes wrong, it's on you. But once it's yours, it's yours.
I'm kind of surprised that it took this long for the PS5 to be jailbroken. Also, which is good on Sony, I suppose, for, being able to hold it down for that long. Obviously the Switch has been jailbreakable for a very long time, or at least that original version of the Switch. I have a modded Switch of the original one anyway, but it's like, and I imagine that it'll probably happen with Switch 2 at some point, maybe even this year. I feel like Nintendo stuff gets cracked like really, really early, but yeah, well,
not going to be pleased about that.
No, they are not going to be pleased about that, and it'll be interesting to see how Nintendo combats that, because that was.
It'd be great if it was the Virtual Boy that did it somehow. When they released the Virtual Boy, it was like, oh no, it's cursed us again.
Yeah. You put the little the loader inside the. Oh my god, I can see it now.
Unlocked, so good,
crazy stuff. Well, I guess that's a PSA for all the nasty pirates out there. But we'll move on to our last bit of news here, and this kind of involves Nintendo, but also the industry as a whole, and essentially. Sales that we've been talking about it pretty much this whole episode, but sales have slowed considerably this past holiday season, at least in the United States. This is reports from Circana here. We talk about Matt Piscatella on the show quite a bit. He has been working for Circana for a while and always tracks United States video game industry sales. And essentially, it seems that the entire games industry as a whole suffered a 27% drop in sales this holiday season versus last holiday season. And that includes Nintendo as well. Nintendo sold more Switch 1s last holiday than they sold Switch 2s this holiday. And so that, I think to some people is ringing some pretty big alarm bells. And I think justifiably so. I don't think that it's not, I think that, let's talk about it, right? Because obviously I think that this is a global trend for, the economy, the global economy as a whole, rather than something that Nintendo's doing wrong, right? Because, we're seeing it, with all these other companies as well. But PS5, a 5-year-old console, outsold the Switch 2, a brand new console this holiday season. Now, granted, PS5 had much deeper discounts on the hardware, going into Black Friday and all that kind of stuff this year. But like I said, the $450 Switch 2 Mario Kart bundle was a good deal, and I was surprised to see that they didn't sell as many of those as they were anticipating. This is probably going to change a little bit of Nintendo's forecasting. They had earlier in the year been like, oh, we're going to sell X number, and then they upped it by like 2.5 million units or something like that. I don't know if they're going to be able to hit that now, and I wonder if that's going to have any effect on their stock. But what do you think about this, George? Kind of off the bat, what do you think is to blame for this?
It's price. It's too much money. It's that's the sort of long and short of it, really. It's gaming is getting increasingly more expensive, and there are people that sort of justify it in all sorts of ways. Oh, it costs X amount of money to make a AAA game, and blah blah blah. But they're not the only experiences that you need to craft. There are lots of things that you can do that aren't that, and will succeed and have much smaller budgets. I just think it sort of smacks of greed. I think people are getting annoyed that it feels like the games industry is getting quite greedy with things and with the amount things cost. And there are costs. So you have to make them. Nintendo famously, never lose money on their hardware, they say, which is fair enough. You don't want to sell things for a loss. But they are a studio that has, a massive library of internationally recognized games that will just sell gangbusters when they release one. They don't have to make, X amount of money on their systems because they'll make tons of money in software that they don't owe any money to anybody else for. So it feels, like I said earlier, it's the first time that I really have to think hard before I sort of dive in with games. And if weirdly, I have a real problem spending 80 quid on one game, but weirdly, if you said to me, here are 2 games for 40 quid, I go, yep, thank you very much. Even if it's the same amount of content, because you just feel like you're getting more from it, right? Or get more out of it. It's also more of a gamble. If I spend 80 quid buying Metroid and I don't like it, I've spent a considerable amount of money on something that I haven't enjoyed. Whereas, if I took a punt on something and go, okay, well, it's 40 quid, it's half the amount. I didn't love it, but it's okay. It was only 40 quid. It's not too bad. So I don't know. I don't know if you agree. I just feel like it's kind of, people sort of feel like people are getting greedy and it's kind of icky. And you sort of go like,
I certainly think that's part of it. I'm kind of the opinion, especially with Nintendo's hardware, I think it's pretty appropriately priced, or at the very least, it feels like Nintendo was getting a little bit ahead of the tariff situation in the US, right?
Yeah.
And I think they're really good at reading economic trends, and they know when stuff is going to go down. I think that's something that Sony and Microsoft failed to do, and then had to up the price of their consoles several times over the last year. Xbox raised the prices twice, right? And so I think, that's crazy. And I think for somebody in last place, like Xbox is right now, more of those little boxes for children, I forget what they're called, sold way more than Xboxes this holiday season.
God.
But, I think as far as the hardware is concerned, I think it's appropriately priced. I think software, with how much Nintendo sells of software, I do think that especially leading the pack on the $80 thing put a really bad taste in people's mouths.
It's not nice.
It really was not a good look for them right now when they had all these other bitter pills to swallow. I think that the reason everybody was so negative about the launch of the Switch 2 is because it wasn't just like, oh, the console is too expensive. It's like the console's too expensive. There's no pack in. The games are $80. It was all these different things. It's an iterative console. There's nothing really new. There was just like, if it was just one or two bad things, I think everybody would have been fine with it. But because it was kind of like, oh, all of these, kind of negative news stories at once, then just the negativity just went haywire this whole launch period.
And more. We're like, hey, we've got game chat. Oh, you want to do game chat? Okay, you've got to buy this camera. So that's more money that you have to put in. If you want the full experience, you've got to get this, you've got to get this. Like, no, I just want the whole thing in one thing.
Yeah.
Please. It's weird, listening to your predictions episode, I also thought it was really interesting because we have all the heavy hitter names on Switch 1. And so Switch 2, it's the first time they've basically gone a number at the end of a console. Very interesting. So for a lot of people, it feels iterative. Switch 2 is very different from Switch in many ways, but for people, it'll be like, well, is it worth that much money if it's just a sort of slightly better Switch?
Right.
Which is inevitably what the name Switch 2 is going to do, because really the PlayStations have been, there have been leaps, obviously, but they're just better versions of the old thing. And some people don't like that. Some people do like that. So that's quite interesting. In terms of their library and what games they're going to put out, they've had the big Mario and the big Zelda. They're going to be coming, but I would be really fascinated to see if they're going to dip into old forgotten series, or, we've already got Tomodachi Life and Rhythm Heaven coming. Mad. They're quite deep cuts at this point. So it doesn't feel like it has the killer app yet. I loved Donkey Kong Bonanza. It's a great game, but it's not Mario and it's not Zelda. And I don't think we're going to get those for a few years. I wonder if it's going to be more of a slow burn, in that we'll have like a sort of relatively slowish 3 years, and then the heavy hitters will come back because it's enough time since Switch 1 that people won't go like, I've got that on Switch because it's so long ago. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that would be an interesting dynamic that plays out, and it'll be interesting to see if that impacts Switch 2, the games that they have for it.
It's like one huge cultural smash could change everything, right? For Switch 2. It's like, like Switch it's not like Switch was doing badly, but it's like when Animal Crossing dropped, Switch sales skyrocketed. You know what I mean? And I think 2020 was an unprecedented year for them, right? It was incredible what they were able to do. And I think that was all because of like one software title, right? So it's like anything can happen at any time, but you're right. Nintendo has decided instead to use the Switch name as the reason to buy a Switch 2 instead of like Breath of the Wild being this incredible 10 out of 10 masterpiece.
You've got one of the best games ever made as your launch title.
Exactly, right? So it is a different approach that they've taken this time. But I think overall, I think this downtrend, I mean, obviously we're seeing this industry wide. So I do think that a lot of this you can't squarely put the blame on Nintendo for. I think that, they're doing their best in a lot of ways. And I think that, people are clearly there. If, like I said at the top, if we're not in the recession already, it will be in it by the end of 2026. It all depends on what happens with this AI bubble and everything, right? That's happening right now. I think obviously the price of things are only going to continue to go up. So I think this sales is going to get worse, I think, before it gets better in the immediate future of 2026. So I think that there's a lot that's out of Nintendo's control here.
Everything costs more. So, it's like, do I buy food and heat or do I buy a game?
Yes.
Obviously food and heat.
Yes. I think people are they're just spending less on video games right now. And like I said, they're getting further into their backlogs. People are playing retro games, and so I think that's okay. And I think that Nintendo prepared for this inevitability. They now have, they've got their subscription service for Nintendo Switch Online, which gains them so much profit every year just from that's what do you call that in a it's like passive income, right? That they are gaining over time with their subscription services.
It is.
And then on top of that, they've got their now in entertainment with movies. They've got their parks. So they've been trying to diversify for the inevitability that the Switch 2 is not as popular as the Switch for a while, right? So to their credit, they've been preparing for this. But I do think that Nintendo got a little cocksure here in a way that they are to blame for some of this. And I was looking into this actually, there's been so many news stories, and I think Nintendo even kind of got high on their own supply on some of this as well, of just this idea that wow, the Switch 2 is the fastest selling console of all time, which it was, right? But let's not get it twisted. The Wii U also sold out when it came out. On release, all the hardcores bought the Wii U, and then it was sales then took a huge dump, right?
I love that little guy.
Oh, no, don't get, this is not Wii U slander. I am a Wii U fan. But if you're going to call it like it is, the Wii U was a failure for Nintendo as a console. Yeah. And I think that, yes, this is the highest selling console of all time, but I think if the Wii U had produced, 5-10 million units in that first year, I think it would have potentially been the highest selling console of all time there as well. It's Nintendo just put so much money into making sure supply was out there and getting as much out there as they can so they could have the headline of this is the fastest selling console of all time, the biggest launch ever, but now because they put so much out there, I don't know that demand has kept up with supply, right? No. And so I am a little concerned about what 2026 in the immediate future is going to look like. And overall, with these trends, I find it hard to think that the Switch 2 is going to get even near as popular as the Switch 1 ever was. I just can't see it hitting those huge highs of the Switch.
No. I mean, it will sell loads, but I think, just the price of the game. The price of the game's left a really bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths, and it's not going to go away. They've, unless they reduce the price of their games, unlikely, or they stay the course and don't raise the prices of games while other people are raising prices, then you go, okay, well, it's horrible that it costs this much money, but it's not as much money as this.
Yes.
They're the sort of two options that would kind of relieve that pressure. But beyond that, I don't really see how they come back from that without going, do you know what? We pitched it wrong. Yeah, these are games and we want people to have access to them. There was that sort of, I'm going to misquote it, but that kind of thing of hey, if you can't afford it, then you can just play the Switch. Right, whoa, hang on. That's don't be an asshole.
Right, yeah, that's giving me
these things.
Xbox 360 flashbacks of
exactly.
Some of that. Yeah.
Actually, well, no, why don't you just make it accessible for other people to be able to enjoy it? That makes more sense to me. But then again, I'm a consumer, I'm not a business person. So there are ways they could walk it back. Whether or not they'll do that, I don't know. There are things that would help it, I think. But again, I'm not a business person.
No, I think that's a great point. And I think you're right there that Nintendo, I think, has an opportunity here. And I think the ship has sailed on reducing the price of anything. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think Nintendo has an opportunity here to be the ones that don't raise it further. You know what I mean? Yes. And it's look, I get it. They don't want to lose money on console sales, right? But if anyone in this industry can, it's Nintendo. They're the only ones that have this giant, bank account, and their largesse is just enormous. It's it's compared to anybody else. It's just, it's apples and oranges. Right. And so I think that I think it would be very important for Nintendo to cash in on a lot of cultural capital right now, and if, what we talked about earlier with Metroid, them looking back and admitting some of their L's, that's unprecedented. Nintendo doesn't really do that, I mean, here they are celebrating the Virtual Boy in 2026, which is up until the Wii U, Nintendo's biggest failure, right? So I think that it's they have this opportunity right now to buy back.
Don't listen to it.
For the audio listeners, George is consoling his Virtual Boy in the background right now.
I have a working authentic Virtual Boy. Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've been talking about this, but I think Arlo put out a great video on this recently on just the different ways that Nintendo could buy back good favor with their fans. You know, we talked about Nintendo Selects being one of them. I think not raising the price on their console, taking that hit, you know, I think will buy them favor in the general marketplace, and not just here with, you know, the echo chamber of gamers that are, you know, cashing in on this Nintendo hate industrial complex, but, you know, normies at large, I think, as they're feeling the pinch as this oncoming recession happens and they end up staying home, not going out, you know, not going to these third spaces anymore, they're going to start to turn to games. And if there is a affordable alternative, you know, if they get into this market that is doing so well with these affordable little kids boxes, you know, that are being put out, you know, if Nintendo corners that market again, as they have in the past, I think they have a really good opportunity to, you know, keep the sales of the system alive, not necessarily reach the heights of the original Switch, but I do think that they can get close.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my soapbox for the day, and I think I'm not an economist either. I'm just a fair weather Nintendo fan, but I think that's what I would recommend.
I realize I didn't give you a lot of back and forth there, but I feel like
it's okay.
I just feel like we're in agreement. I feel like we're in agreement. You know, I don't think we can really say much more about it. It's just sort of going there. It feels like you want to feel valued as a consumer, right? As somebody who buys into something, and I think a lot of people don't feel that at the moment.
Right. Yeah, time will certainly tell. My butthole is properly clenched looking at 2026 and just what is going to happen with the global economy as a whole, especially, you know, being a games industry pundit, seeing some of, you know, these trends. You know, it really scares me as prices go up and people's paychecks go down, you know, what the future of this industry has in store, especially with so many friends being game developers and working in this industry, be it as creators of the games or, you know, covering, you know, games journalism, you know, friends that are, you know, constantly losing their jobs. Like, I really hope that there is an opportunity here to take lessons from this and not, you know, just kind of tank the entire industry and we see another big crash, which I think is not impossible. But hate to end on such a potentially negative note here, but I do think that is going to do it for our massively bloated news section this episode. But I think
so much news.
I think we did great. I mean, it's been great shooting the shit with you here, George.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But we're not done with the episode quite yet because we have one last small segment of the show, which is the games we've been playing recently. I have been playing a few games. I've been, you know, reading a lot, watching a lot of movies, but I have had time to play some games. Obviously, I've got my normal games that I always play. Tetris 99 has been getting a lot of play from me recently. I just love Tetris 99 so much. And I also started A Link to the Past on GBA NSN. I've never actually finished A Link to the Past, so I'm hoping to actually have this be the time where I fully commit to actually finishing this one completely. I do love the Game Boy Advance version of that game quite a bit.
Oh, where are you? I know that game like the back of my hand.
I'm still early. You know, and I've played, you know, I've played the game before, but I'm in the early game right now. But
you've got to finish it.
Yeah, I will. Good. I will.
I'll
do it for you, George.
Beautiful moment. Please have me back on the show when you finish the game so we can talk about the game.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful. I mean, you know, we mentioned Ocarina of Time earlier in the show. It is as good and as beautiful as Ocarina of Time in 2D. And, you know, it's the kind of, it kind of sets the steps for Ocarina of Time, right? You can sort of say Ocarina of Time is kind of the 3D version of that game. There are very many similar aspects. There's lovely twists, like the flute boy. Like there's so many gorgeous moments in that game, and it still holds up so well.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. I love Pink Bunny Link.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love Pink Hair Link. But the two games that I do want to talk about that I've been spending the most time with, first of all, is Big Hops. And fans of this show will remember we had the developer of this game on quite a bit ago. This is a new 3D platformer that's not officially out yet. This game fully releases on the 12th of January. But I got a code from Chris to play this game early, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. I think Kickstarter backers also have their codes right now. This game is coming out on Steam, PlayStation, and Switch. And man, this is an excellent game. I'm loving it so much.
Cool.
It's a wonderful 3D platformer with amazing movement. It's got really fun exploration and characters, tons of voice acting. The graphics are awesome. Definitely, if you are interested in 3D platformers at all, I really recommend that you check out Big Hops. I'm past kind of the initial, desert area of the game. I can't actually talk too much about what comes after that area because the game is still under embargo. But I will say, I've got the trailer up right now in the video version. Definitely check it out. It's so much fun to play. And I think that we're in this wonderful era of like expressive 3D platformers at the moment. And I miss them. I know. I love it. I love it so much. Yeah. It's so nice to really be in this golden age of 3D platformers right now. We've got a lot of games I'm really looking forward to in the genre coming out this year, but do not let Big Hops pass you by. I've been completely smitten with my gameplay so far. And then the last game that I'll bring up that I've been playing, this is another game that I got a code for. And this is Games with Balls. This is a game that is made for the Steam Deck. So if you remember those kind of like wooden kind of like rolling ball puzzles with the holes in them and you kind of move it around, this game is basically that, but on the Steam Deck. So you use the gyro of the Steam Deck in order to move the ball around in a thing. And this game is actually really cool because all of the levels are actually handcrafted. So the guy who made this game, actually built these wooden ball rolling things in real life, took pictures of them, and then brought them into the game to be used on the Steam Deck. So very, very fun game. I've been playing this one right now. There is a demo out for Game with Balls. If you have a Steam Deck, that's obviously the best way to play it. I know you can also play this game in desktop mode, like with a mouse, but this is definitely one that having the gyro and moving it around is definitely the preferred way to play it, and I'd really recommend it. It would be awesome if you could get this game to come out on the Switch, because it would obviously be a really great fit in handheld mode on the Switch. But cheers. That one comes out January 27th, and I've been really enjoying my time with that as well. But George, what about you? What have you been playing recently?
So I think I mentioned earlier, Silk Song's been kicking my ass. I don't use guides, but I do, obviously see things posted. So I kept hearing Act 3 mentioned, and I did the boss at the end of Act 2 and kept going, where's Act 3? When's it going to start? So I discovered it about a week ago. So I'm just working my way through that. And man, that game gets brutal and punishing when you get into Act 3. So still enjoying it, still like not hit a fundamental wall yet. I am committed to only playing a maximum of 2 games at a time. Not going to do more than that. So Metroid Prime 4 is sat on my shelf from Christmas. It is waiting to be played. I think we sort of touched on it earlier. I'm going in with quite low expectations. So I might be the outlier. I'm like, it's the best game ever made because I'm not expecting great things.
It's a good game. Let me raise those expectations for you a little bit. I'm really enjoying it. Yeah.
But this is always the thing, right? If you go in thinking like, okay, like it's probably going to be okay, and then you're just really pleasantly surprised, then it's always like a nice little bonus. And then I think I hope I should know the guy's name. I think it's Mark Max. He does a few color hacks for Game Boy. Yeah. Yes, I played a few of them. I mean, if you're an enjoyer of Game Boy, please go and check out his work. There's another person as well who did sort of Mario Land. He's working on The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls, which is incredible.
Yeah, I've actually talked to him about having him on the podcast at some point soon. Hopefully that happens.
Please do. Yes.
I think there's a bit of a language barrier there, but we're working on it. Yeah.
Tell him to finish. Tell him to make it and just send it to me. Give me a code. No, the Mole Mania, I love Mole Mania. It's one of my favorite Nintendo one and dones. Really underrated. I wish they would bring it back. I just did a podcast for Source Gaming with Josh, one of my co-hosts on NintenDormant. He had me and John on to talk about who we would have in a new Smash Brothers game, and I said Muddy Mole from Mole Mania because I think he's been done dirty. That'd
be a very Sakurai move.
It'd be hilarious. I can already picture his moveset. But Mole Mania, if you've never played Mole Mania, it's not on NSO, and I cannot understand why. But if you haven't played it, go and play it. It's a fantastic game. And I've been playing it in color for the first time. And it's a beautiful color hack.
I love really color hacks. Just anytime somebody makes a DX version of an original Game Boy game, like that Frog for Who the Bell Tolls, like
it looks incredible.
I mean, he's been working on that forever. I've been like eagerly awaiting that. But I think it keeps getting pushed down the line because he keeps getting actual industry gigs because he's so good at this stuff. But great stuff. I'll definitely have to check out.
His Mario Land 2 hack is superb.
Oh, it's incredible.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Great stuff. But well, awesome. I think then if that's all, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much, George, for coming on this episode of Switch Headz. It was such a delight to get to talk to you.
Yeah, no, I've had an absolute blast. Who would have thought that going through all the news with somebody who has no idea about news would be so much fun?
It was fruitful.
I'm saying, I'm putting words in your mouth. No, I had a very good time.
I had a great time. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be sure to reach out and have you on again sometime.
Yes,
always
please come back
a
to us
delight.
too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Thanks to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. If you'd like to find me online, I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, George? Where can people find you online?
We're over on Blue Sky, so NintenDormant. It's the only social media that we do at the moment, which is probably a mistake. We need to change that, but that's fine. If you search NintenDormant, it works better when you read it. It's Nintendo and Dormant squished in, but NintenDormant on YouTube. If you enjoy the show, please do subscribe. Help us to grow there. We'd really appreciate it. Each week, we take a forgotten Nintendo game or series. We do a little quiz. We play a little game, have a bit of fun, and then every person plays president and pitches their vision to bring the game back. I have my resident guest, John Cartwright from Good Vibes Gaming, and Josh Goldie from Source Gaming.
That's right.
And we have obviously very special guests from Nintendo Premier Podcasts on too. So yeah, come check out the show. It's a lot of fun, and yeah, we hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, John's a friend of the show over here as well. We've had him on Switch Headz a few times, so it's nice to kind of slowly pick my way through all the all the British Nintendo content creators that I know out there right now. We've been getting you on one at a time. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yes. I'll take my my money in pounds right now. Thank you very much. We'll have a link to NintenDormant in the description of this episode, so make sure you check them out. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Blue Sky and Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We've got a lot more short-form content coming out recently, so make sure you subscribe to us over on TikTok. Be on the lookout for YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels as well. It's been a lot of fun, actually, making those and seeing a lot more engagement from people over there. We have a website, switchheadz.com. And we also have a Discord, a Patreon, and a Facebook group. We'll have links to all three of those in the description of this episode, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're listening over on Apple or Spotify or any of these other podcasting platforms. Be sure you leave a review over there, like and subscribe over on YouTube, share it with your friends, and join us on the Discord. We would love to have you over there. It's such a wonderful community that we've been able to cultivate over the years over there on the Discord. Please join us there. And if you feel like chucking in a buck over on the Patreon, I certainly would not stop you. But overall, thank you for supporting the show. We're going to be back next week with another banger of an episode, as long as I'm not too exhausted from MagFest. I hope I don't catch COVID while I'm over there. We'll have to see. I'll probably be fine, right? I think everything's fine. COVID's over, right? Anyway, I think other than that, guys, you know the drill. Be safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Follow the news. Follow gaming news, because real life news is a little bit too depressing. But with that said, fuck ICE, free Palestine. We love you guys very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.